He's just back right now from Austin, Texas. Jed Drenning of thesignalcaller.com. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Tony. How you guys doing?
We're well. How are you?
Well, in so many ways, still recovering. You know, it was a long trip, but obviously it was worth it. Now we got to turn around. It's what the Big 12 is all about. Before you really have time to recover, you got to turn around and go back out and do it again.
Absolutely. This is the biggest trap game in the history of the free world. There, I might have overstated it a little, but I'm telling you what. From this perspective, if there's ever a better setup for Texas Tech, I don't know what it would be. You lose at home for the first time this season. You don't play well. You commit turnovers. Your quarterback, who's a good quarterback, has a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma slaps you, and everyone's down in Lubbock. And West Virginia goes in and has one of the biggest wins in school history, biggest crowd ever at Texas. I mean, they didn't even need fuel to fly home. I mean, it was just like vaporized our way home. And now all you got to do now is go back over there to Lubbock and beat Texas Tech. Well, that's all right because they just got beat by Oklahoma, so no big deal.
Well,
if that's the mentality, West Virginia will come back here and we'll sit here next Monday and go, you know, what in the heck just happened?
You're exactly right. I mean, it's one of those games, Tony, that when the schedule came out months ago, May, June, you looked at it and you thought, hey, I don't care what circumstances surround that Texas Tech game, that's going to be tough. In other words, I couldn't come up with a scenario in which it wouldn't be tough. Forget whether they're winning or losing. I mean, just look at what we're going through. As you touched on, you're coming off what was going to be, an emotional crossroads no matter what played out at Texas, and you're heading all the way back out there to West Texas. 7 days later, it's just going to be a challenge. And now you have all of a sudden a football team that does have some punch to it, and they're licking their wounds as you hit on. It's you got a quarterback who started hot. Now he's thrown 5 picks in the last couple games. He had 3 against Oklahoma, and that was kind of the turning point early in the second half of that football game. So he wants to right the ship on the offensive side. And these guys can move the football. And looking at some numbers, it doesn't take long to find things that they're actually doing a little better than we are.
Mm-hmm.
More plays per game, more first downs per game, more plays of 10-plus yards per game. So they're a very efficient offense, and we're going to have our hands full. And we'd have our hands full if they were coming to Morgantown. But that's made all the more difficult by the fact that we have to hop on another plane, fly out into the desert, and do this thing all over again, and really try and do it with a level mind after what we accomplished Saturday night.
Absolutely. Jed Drenning, the signal caller and the football savant, joins us. The senator and I were here in the chamber before the show began, and we were talking about, and he made the great point, if you put into perspective what West Virginia has done statistically, it makes you scratch your head. And, Senator, I'll allow you to have the floor. I'll defer my final 30 seconds to you on the floor.
So Jed, this will be right up your alley to expand on this. But my point was, so the statistics are just mind-boggling. Gino's doing what Gino's doing. Take the 656, whatever, pick a stat for him.
Mm-hmm.
The ridiculous stat that has come out recently of Stedman now sets a single-season record for receiving touchdowns in less than half a season.
Mm-hmm.
Tavon equaling his touchdown output from the last 2 years in less than half a season.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought the most unique thing was we now have 2 running backs that have gone over 200 yards in this system, neither of which would be the starting back if Sean Alston was healthy. I think that's remarkable.
It is remarkable. That's actually something I hit on in a tweet today because you can add to that, Brad, the fact that our third guy, when he gets back healthy, is a 12-touchdown guy from a year ago. So you have those 3 to draw from in the run game. And really, who saw this thing coming? I can't claim that anybody did because the one guy who showed tremendous upside, a year ago was Dustin Garrison. And you hit on that 200-yard game, 291 against Bowling Green. But, of course, he came into the season injured. You didn't know where that was going to go. It was slow to come along. So who really saw this level of punch coming? But, the numbers, they jump out at you from every direction. I mean, Tavon has now established himself as such a constant in this system. That he has 6 games dating back to the Orange Bowl, 6 games in which he's caught a touchdown pass and caught 10 or more passes. If that's not consistent, I don't know what is. And 13 touchdowns by Stedman, you hit on that. broke the school record of 12 already. Well, Geno, something I had some fun with today. Geno with 24 touchdown passes already. The Alabama single-season school record's 20. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other schools that have a record of less than 24. So it's very, very difficult to defend so long as we, it's an all-hands-on-deck mentality, and we continue to be efficient. We had a couple leaks the other night that almost hurt us, but not quite. For the most part, we've done a good job through 5 games of protecting the football. And all those numbers would be of little consequence if you had 15 turnovers at this point, but we don't. That's the most important one. We're being very savvy with the football. Geno's not putting it in harm's way. Again, there were a couple pressure issues the other night. Jarred a couple things loose, put the ball on the carpet there. We can address that, but that's the number that jumps out the most. But you're right. How often do you see that? A couple 200-yard rushers, neither of which would, really necessarily be pegged as the starter. So, think about the defenses that are trying to prepare for this.
Yeah.
You talk about yanking your hair out and burning the midnight oil because we've talked often about the fact that Dana Holgorsen believes for all the world that his system is a 3-dimensional offense. And those 3 dimensions are the pass game, the run game, the play action game. Well, when 1 and 2 are working, 3 is absolutely going to work. And it makes it incredibly, incredibly difficult to the nth degree to try and stop. So it's one of those old adages where it seems like the only thing that could stop us is ourselves, but so far we haven't done that.
Jed Drenning from the signalcaller.com joins us.
Hey, Jed, how about this win specifically over Texas? What do you think that did for West Virginia's perception nationwide that they are a true title contender?
Well, let's confine it to this season alone, Garrett, and that is it removes the the asterisk from
Hello, Jed, are you there? Did we lose the Jedmeister?
We did.
We lost the Jedmeister.
Question threw him
Get him
off.
back. I tell you what, I've seen Jed.
He just hung up. He didn't want to answer.
Just shut him down.
I've seen Jed unfrazzled on several occasions, so we'll hook back up. We'll hook back up with Jed here in just a second. But it's a great point. By the way, since your question was a national perspective question, G, while we wait for Jed to jump back on here, should point out that Fox Sports choosing the West Virginia-Kansas State game today they picked it for obviously a week from Saturday. It will air at 7 o'clock kickoff a week from this Saturday, West Virginia, Kansas State. All right, Jed, we caught you in mid-sentence. Go right ahead.
What I'm saying is you can remove, after that win in Austin, you can remove the button, Tony. That's what that's all about. There's no more qualifiers that are necessary. People are trying to dress down each of our own 4 opponents and hold them up to the light and look for the ugly spots. And of course, every football team is going to have those ugly spots. But now I think if you go and march into Texas in front of 102,000 people, record crowd, a raucous environment, if you can win in that environment, you can win anywhere. I was thinking to myself, that 4th and 6, that's the play that really jumps out to me. The 4th and 6 on the go-ahead drive in the 4th quarter, they were moving right to left from our sidelines. And as Geno approached the line, that is the loudest I've ever heard a football stadium get. And we were in Baton Rouge a couple of years ago. We all know that. As impressed as we were by Tiger Stadium, it never got as loud as DKR did several times the other night. But the loudest DKR got was on that 4th and 6. I remember thinking, I have my headset on. I have one ear so I can hear our producer. I have the other out so I can hear things on the sideline. And my head was vibrating from the noise. I remember as Geno walked the line, watching him and thinking, you got Big Bertha beating. You got the scoreboard with that, the Godzillatron flashing louder and 102,000 people responding to that message. I remember thinking, if he doesn't wilter here, if he doesn't crumble here, he never will. He could play in 5 Super Bowls, and that won't impact him if this play doesn't. And sure enough, it didn't. He stepped up, fired 11 yards to Tavon. Tavon, a great job of holding on to the football. That was a key play in that drive. Helped us win a very key game. And looking at the larger picture, what all that means is I don't think we have to deal with any more of those. Yeah, but Maryland's this and not that. Yeah, but Marshall's this and not that. You went into Texas against a ranked team, knocked off a quality opponent, and took their absolute best shots. That puts all that to rest.
Yeah, absolutely. Jed Drenning from the signalcaller.com joining us.
So moving ahead, Jed, talk to us a little bit about Texas Tech. Is this a normal, standard Tuberville team, or is this a little bit different?
Well, I think that it's difficult to get your thumb on the pulse of what normal and standard is with Tommy Tuberville. I mean, when we think back to when we saw him in 2008 when he brought that team that was really struggling in the Mountaineer field. Of course, he had Tony Franklin as his O-coordinator. He was uncomfortable with what they were doing out of a spread set. He's an old I formation guy, and so they struggled mightily that year and ended up costing him his job, or at least it was one of several factors that did. And then he lands in Tech, and he inherits what Mike Leach had built. So it stood to reason for him to pick the ball up and run with it. So I think, in large measure, maybe against the grain of what he traditionally believed in, he started leaning on the spread because of the talent that he inherited and the talent that he saw that he could recruit there to really fit that system. So I think it's the new Tommy Tuberville is what we're looking at since 2009 moving forward. And he's recognized the fact that, hey, it's fun to pitch and catch with these guys. We got some playmakers on the perimeter. I got a quarterback and a trigger man I can trust. I got a couple backs that I can lean on a little bit, so we know we can score. And that was never Tech's problem a year ago. Even down the stretch after they knocked off Oklahoma and dropped 5 straight to end the year, that was, by and large, a defensive problem. They couldn't get people off the field. When you look at the numbers they give up defensively, I think 56% third down conversion success their opponents had in that 5-game losing streak to close out last year. They couldn't get the football back in the hands of their offense. So over the course of the offseason, I think they learned from that. They hit the junior college level to address some gaping holes for some immediate help. He went out and hired a new D coordinator. It's a guy he feels he can trust that he used to work with at Ole Miss. And they've kind of reinvented themselves on that side of the football. And are they, worthy of that number 1 ranking they had going into that Oklahoma game? Well, of course not. But they're so much better than they were fundamentally a year ago. And that's really all they need to be with that offense. So that can give them a puncher's chance. So offensively, maybe we're looking at the new Tuberville offense to answer your question. And I think the key to this will turn on, can their defense get our offense off the field? That's what this will turn on.
Right now, their defense has improved significantly. As Jed said, they had a problem getting people off the field on third down last year. So far this season, teams are converting just 35% on third down, while Texas Tech is converting 58% of its third down conversion attempts. Statistically, you want to do a little tail of the tape. West Virginia is averaging 52 a game. Tech is averaging 39. West Virginia is averaging 570 yards of offense. Tech not far behind at 509. Their defense is giving up 17 points per game. West Virginia is giving up 35 points per game. And before we focus everything on Texas Tech, one last talk here with Jed about West Virginia defensively. You know what? Even though they gave up 63 the previous week, I still had a feeling, you know what? I've seen bad defenses. I didn't think it was a horrible defense. And I came away out of the Texas game going, you know what? It's not a horrible defense. You can't go in to Texas with that big horse of an offensive line, and you held them to 3.5 rushing yards per snap. That is good. You do that the rest of the way, and you're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, I think you are going to be in good shape, Tony. And the truth of the matter is this. A week ago, I explored an article. I put together a piece for WVSports.com trying to prepare Mountaineer fans for really what Big 12 football is all about. I mean, if you're waiting on us to flip the switch and get back to holding teams under 300 yards and 13 points, forget it. Don't hold your breath. That's not what this conference is about. You can't face week in, week out these 7, 8, 9 quality offenses and hope to do that on any level of consistent basis. So what you have to do is find ways to play great situational football. I mean, let's look back a year ago. I didn't hear many indictments against Oklahoma State. They were a championship defense, but they finished on the stat sheet 107th in the country in yards allowed. People weren't complaining about that because they had 44 turnovers and ended up helping win the conference. So when you look at what West Virginia did the other night, I could write 1,000 articles, and it's not going to demonstrate to Mountaineer fans what Big 12 football is really all about better than the balance of that 60 minutes in Austin did. I mean, we had 48 to 45. You can argue, yeah, we give up 45 points. Yeah, we give up this many yards. But the truth of the matter is, break down how we give up the points. First one's on the defensive side, a couple more so they set the table. But what this comes down to is you hit one of the nails on the head. 3.5 yards per carry to Texas. So we had them struggling a bit in the run game. Nobody expected that. But more importantly, there were points throughout the course of that football game that we absolutely, positively had to force them off the field. And at the most important points, our defense did it. I mean, the truth of the matter is, with a couple of those stops, what we were looking at was, especially toward the end of the game, I mean, the entire team celebrated the defense's accomplishment, like the GIs going back to Paris in 1945. And it was, everybody recognized what that was all about. So that game demonstrated, hey, this is how you win in the Big 12. You don't play defensive football where you hold somebody to 250 and 10 points. What you do instead, you play great situational football, a turnover here or there if you can, but get them off the field, and that's exactly what our defense did.
The signal caller, Jed Drenning, joins us. Jed, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Take care, buddy. We'll see you. Jed Drenning.